Hello, and welcome to the Blue Lineage website and video podcast series. Blue Lineage is designed to really highlight the innovators, creators, and just the whole energy and idea around the blues and how that sort of continued to carry on through, you know, culture and the genres that followed. If you look at the timeline, the Blue Lineage timeline on the website, um, it focuses on the genres of blues, R&B, rock, funk, and hip hop. Um, Obviously there's other genres that can be covered, but that was just the idea, focusing on the blues and kind of following that lineage. And as the video series unfolds, we'll kind of work out how we included certain events in history and also the artists that we chose. So, as I mentioned, the timeline is really the core of the Blue Lineage concept and website and community that we're trying to build. And eventually, if you go to the website, it's you know, it's a little bit I guess basic. You can say a little bit simple at this point. Um, but eventually it's going to include a lot. The whole idea is hopefully to, through this video discussion, through this video series, open up discussion, some dialogue, get everybody on the same page as we kind of build this community. And down the road, the video podcast will have guests. When things open up, trying to promote events, align with artists who kind of fit this Blue Lineage concept model, and we'll really see where it goes. But at this point, the video podcast series is going to start by breaking down the timeline. Once again, if you go to bluelineage.com, you can click on the timeline and you can see on the left there are mostly cultural events and events in history that kind of impacted just the evolution of the blues and the following genres, and also just kind of the music industry and how that evolved and impacted um, Black American music. And then on the right side, you can see artists and radio DJs as well as other figures who may not have been specifically musicians or contributed musically to um, to the Black American music history, but are important figures. Um, Also on the website, you can see that there's artists and terminology sections. And as we continue this video podcast series, that list will grow. Um, right now, the only two artists on the list are W.C. Handy and Mommy Smith, because those are going to be the two artists featured in the first episode next week. And as well, as you can see on the left side, there's a bunch of terminology, including stuff that's not even on there. This first podcast it'll be good to review the terminology section before you even watch the podcast, because it's going to be the one that has the most terminology that's not actually on the timeline, that talks about some of the precursor events, some of the things that led up to the creation of the what we call the blues now, and just that kind of music scene and what was going on culturally leading up to it. As you can see, there's already some examples. I mean, the minstrel shows and some of the stuff that kind of took place before the blues, at least commercially, was formed, but led up to it. So here we can take a look at the website, scroll through it a bit. Like I said, there's not a whole lot to see at this point. We're also Blue Lineage on Instagram. Our YouTube channel is, really just this video at this point, but if you're listening to this later, welcome, and hopefully there's some other episodes you can take a peek at. We're also streaming on Spotify and Apple Music, a few other places where you get your podcast. I'll have a more complete list soon. So yeah, at this point, just check out the timeline. There's a few other things to look at the website, but not a whole lot right now. Feel free to get ahead. As I said, um, next week is going to be pretty history oriented. We'll talk about W.C. Handy and Mommy Smith. It will be a little bit different, I think, than some of the follow up episodes, just because it is just kind of getting into the early stages of blues. As you listen to W.C. Handy, especially, that's why each of these artists includes songs, because obviously with YouTube and some of these other platforms, you run into some copyright and monetization issues playing music. So all of these have songs. All these artists have songs next to their name, and I think it was better to include a song than to give them a description of who they were, because I think just by listening to a track, one way or another, I think we can find these tracks to listen to, and I think that kind of their music, I think, speaks a little bit more clearly than their words, and you can kind of hear that evolution as you go down the timeline. But as I was saying, with W.C. Handy, you can when you listen to if you do listen to Memphis Blues or some of his recordings, he's not exactly what you would think of when you think of the blues. If you've listened to the blues before, it's kind of ragtimey sound. But of course, this was the first commercial blues recording. So W.C. Handy, he recounts at one point, I'm not sure when, but he talks about how one of the times when he first heard the blues, it was just a guy sitting on the side of the road or somewhere in public playing guitar and playing the blues. And I think that sound is more what we would associate the blues with. But you have to remember that especially getting the commercial music, it had to have some sort of commercial appeal to be recorded. The blues, the origins are slavery, sharecroppers, black culture, which was of course segregated, isolated from the mainstream communities. So there had to be some appeal, and some of these more. W.C. Handy was a well-versed musician, so he brought it into that light, but it's not exactly what you would think of when you think of the blues. It's definitely a different sound, and also another factor, of course, was the acoustic guitar. The blues was one of the first genres to really bring the guitar into the center point of music. Prior to that, was an individual instrument or kind of a rhythm or side instrument, if that, or a solo instrument. Did I say that already? But it took a while. Number one, electrified music really helped bring the guitar into the forefront, and so you could take the lead, or you could at least hear some of the rhythm sections in a big band. So it bringing that sound from that solo act into the commercial music market, that was a huge piece of it also, and what eventually led to blues sounding more like what we think of as blues today. Because even some of the later artists that we'll talk about still don't really have that sound, but it starts to get that more bluesy sound, because people who have been playing the blues more traditionally or specifically started getting into the industry, and that started to evolve the sound and um, make it to what you think of today. But we'll get into that more next week. That was just a little bit of some background, I guess, just to kind of explain how things are going to open up and move forward from here. Yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. It was really just an introduction. Like I said, we'll have articles that will be posted on the website and also be shared on our Instagram, which is also Blue Lineage. And when new videos come up, they'll be on the website and also on the YouTube channel. And we'll utilize some other social media to just make sure we keep in contact and keep in touch, keep everyone updated. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with me. So please use those avenues. Discussion and feedback is definitely encouraged. This is really a building process. Everything starts with this timeline, and then I think by the time we get to the end, it'll be interesting. I think just putting all this together, there was a lot of stuff that even I was surprised by. I guess is I think the industry has a way of. Well, let me say this first. The industry. A lot of Black American music was almost designed, in retrospect, as far as how the genres were set up and categorized. For example, W.C. Handy, all these early blues musicians, their music was called race music or race records by the industry, and a lot of these categories are like that. That people called them by completely different names than they do today, and it was kind of shaped by what we would say today. Not, we're not referring to W.C. Handy's music as race music anymore. So a lot of the stuff was kind of recategorized, made socially acceptable, and aligned with, later standards. But the way it actually evolved was much different, and I think really characterized how people receive the music, how people, what people were able to receive and hear, what they were exposed to, the role of the DJ, not in hip hop, but before that, the whole way along, the role of the black radio, black DJs was, I think sometimes we might separate those. I think a lot of people think of radio and music going hand in hand, but maybe we don't associate. Maybe we don't include that in the evolution of Black American music. Maybe we do, but I thought that was cool to kind of just add that piece into the timeline and integrate it with these other artists. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, and definitely tune in next week for the first episode of the Blue Lineage video podcast series.